At first, being dead seemed almost the same as being alive. No, you didn't have to eat or sleep or shit anymore, and you didn't get as emotionally driven by all the day-to-day bullshit, but the rest was mostly the same. The only catch was you just had to hang around your book collection. You had to spend year after year, dollar after dollar building it when you were living, and damned if anyone else was going to have it when you were dead. The only fear you had when you woke up after going to sleep and, well, never waking up, was what would happen to your books. Mom had obviously inherited everything, with him being childless, wireless, and, well, friendless, and he had no idea what she would do with it all, and that is the only thing he was actually scared of after dying. Fortunately, she was extremely devastated by his passing and had decided to leave it all as it had been when he was alive, in a morbid sort of museum of a wasted life. It was the most wanted he had ever felt in his life, ironically, all when he couldn't feel anything and didn't have a life that he could cherish in the first place. Everything was going grand until Tommy Chuckles came into play. He seemed just another poor bastard, another aimless remnant wandering about. He came downstairs out of nowhere one cool night. A denim jacket, 70s mustache, and swagger. He seemed cool as hell for a dead man. He made endless conversation, smiling behind his cold, dead eyes, chuckling after almost every sentence. Apparently it wasn't just a clever name. Apparently his anchor, his tether to the lands of the living, was a beat-up old Volkswagen. The lucky devil got to travel about, spending his eternity going around as the newest purchaser was an avid book collector. Yes, he hoarded and kept them in a large archive, never disturbing and always protected. He was a watcher. Consider him like a librarian or an archivist. The newer spirit perked up. He knew his mother was not in the best of health, and with his collection well guarded by an obsessor, well, he could be around forever. Chuckles saw this ghost excitement and laughed, clapping him on his ephemeral back. Oh man, that's what's keeping you here, huh? Shit, man, that's sad. Real sad. The young ghost's smile faded, suddenly confused at Tommy Chuckles' reaction, that sudden shift of behavior. Tommy was actually bent over now with his laughter, hands clasped at his abdomen. As he stood back up and wiped a non-existent mean-spirited tear, the nastiest of grins lit his features. Boy, have I got news for you. Tommy now reached behind his back and pulled something shriveled, yellow and black patterns across it. He slipped it onto his face. His body began shaking, and his laughter took on a second layer of sound, a buzzing. He grew 2 more feet, and twin insectile wings tore out of his shoulder blades, legs stretching also and taking on a mantis-like form. A stinger tore itself out from between his legs where his member had been in life, and his eyes took up his whole sides of his face. The young ghost was recoiling in terror now, beyond stunned by this rapid transformation. Tommy was truly a terrifying thing, and his wings took up the entire room as they flittered. It doesn't take too long for your type to open up. You know, where you're going, you'll have to be a lot more careful. With that, Tommy turned, his stinger knocking the shelf down to the ground. The works tumbled, and the young ghost shrieked now with desperate, possessive fear than terror. It leapt towards its anchors, and Tommy swatted him back effortlessly with his wings. Who's there? It was the ghost's living mother, confused at the banging going on in her basement. No collector was here to see the collected treasures of the dead man. Tommy was here for another purpose altogether. Tommy stuck a hand into his abdomen, pulling out 2 sticky, dripping items out of its chitinous body. A Zippo and lighter fluid. Yeah, kid, you're going down where the dead belong, and if you're not a great deal wiser about who you trust, well then... Its monstrous visage took on what seemed like a grin. Well, you're going to learn today. It cackled as it sprayed the contents of the bottle out, then flipped the Zippo onto the pile. Flames started off gently, then began to roar on the dry paper. The young ghost was shrieking even louder now, and the insectile reaper dove upon the anchorless dead, mouth open as snakes would be. It swallowed him whole, and the reaper turned his eyes in the direction of the elder mortal screaming above. It began walking up the stairs slowly, knowing its count of dead was about to grow by 1 more. Guess it's a fire sale. Tommy chuckled once more as he made his way up. Welcome back to the Botch Pit. I'm Chris the Librarian, and this is the next installment in the Beginner's Guide to Geist the Sin Eater 2nd Edition. This guide is going to cover ghosts and reapers, as they go quite hand in hand for reasons you'll see as this guide goes on. Just so everyone listening knows, we have 2 previous Geist guides up already, but one will be going away soon. The first was the Beginner's Guide to Geist the Sin Eater 2nd Edition manuscript. Yeah, I know that's long. You'll note that I said manuscript there, and not lore. That's because at the time we were working with the Kickstarter-endorsed manuscripts, and well, that was done what felt like a lifetime ago. Soon I'll be taking that down for 2 reasons. 1, we now have the backer PDFs of the actual game, And secondly, my rookie skills recording were full effect. Clips everywhere, scattered, volume out of the background, no editing process whatsoever, and no scripting. So you guys in the game deserve better, so I'll have that up soon. Right now though, we're going to cover two other aspects of the game, as I've been poking through the Chronicles of Darkness core book, Geist 1st Edition, Book of the Dead, and more importantly, the actual Geist 2nd Edition core. You'll note that we covered most of Twilight in the first volume of the Guide to the Underworld, but in order to do justice to the topics of this guide, I may have to expand a bit on the topic of Twilight as I go through this guide, as it is quite relevant to these topics. You'll notice that I will not be spending too much time covering the Underworld, or the Great Below as it's called, very much in this particular guide. For more on the Great Below, check out our first volume of our Guide to the Underworld link below. On with the guide. First, it is important to know what a ghost is exactly. Amusingly enough, up until recently, I had a gross misconception as to what a ghost is within the context of the Chronicles of Darkness line. I believed it was a soul that had failed to move on due to attachment or someone or something. Turns out that's not nearly correct. When you die in the Chronicles of Darkness, your soul goes to, well, wherever it's supposed to go, be it heaven or hell, to your lunar gods, even into the God Machine. I can't be the one to tell you that, as it's just about never clarified, likely on purpose. Regardless, one thing for sure I can tell you is that a ghost is most definitely not a soul. A ghost is the leftovers after the soul goes on to its final destination, in some manner of obsession in either the part of the dead or the living that refuse to let go of that memory. It drives it to take on its own ephemeral form, complete with memories as long as it's the appropriate rank, but we'll get to that. That ephemeral form, our ghost, is not typically just a mindful thing. Not entirely, at least. They have some sort of sentience, of self-awareness. It may not be a soul, but it most definitely still is a person. It has memories, attachments, and after a time, a healthy dose of loneliness-induced madness. Ghosts have a very basic ranking system based on their power, sanity, substance, and general existence on the planes. The ranks are as follows. A rank 0 ghost is non-sapient. That is for like the ghost objects and animals, and almost a way of measuring haunting effects from ghosts. Things that just bleeding eyes from a statue, knocking at the walls with no other accompanying ghostly errata, that's where the rank 0 goes. It's more almost effects than ghost itself. Rank 1 ghosts are those that exist just to be there, stuck in a loop over and over, or perhaps only being seen on that one day in a leap year and not doing shit other than looking spooky. Often not even remembering anything aside from what happened in their life at that specific moment, these guys are no danger to anyone without outside interference. Rank 2, now we're getting somewhere interesting. Fully aware and cognizant of their condition, if these poor souls weren't trapped in Twilight, they'd seem as fully functioning as you or me. This is your generalized denizen of Twilight that you would be able to converse with, and just about the strongest force you'll encounter in Twilight. Now, rank 3 to 5 ghosts, well, they're not really so much just ghosts anymore, and I'll clarify that. These are more forces of death at this point, and that's what many of the Sin Eaters and other creatures call Geists. Ghosts that have likely drank from the potent and dangerous, quote-unquote, waters of the underworld. They're mostly alien now, less human than they've ever been, and their essence is filled over with the gunk and power of the underworld. However, unlike what the next rank is, given time and the right eyes, one can still dig through that funk and find the relative humanity buried below. Rank 6, however, well, those at this rank and above it, should you somehow survive coming across them, relatively long enough to see, these things were likely never human to begin with. This is where Chthonians and Kerberoi, and the Chthonic gods, God help you, get ranked. And if they're there in the Chronicle, you likely won't be much longer. That's the basic method they use to rank ghosts in the Chronicle of Darkness, not just Geist. You can use the system anywhere, it's just most important to my lovely Sin Eaters is all. Don't forget, almost every type of supernatural, and even mortals, have methods in the Chronicles of Darkness to interact with the denizens of Twilight. Also, ghosts can only gain rank by drinking from the quote-unquote waters of the underworld, or, a rank 5 Death Arcana mage. Fortunately, they cannot also lose rank unless a specific mechanic allows it to be that way. Ghosts power their day-to-day ghosting using essence, a mechanic that symbolizes their tether to whatever or whoever is keeping them going in Twilight. In the underworld, it works a bit differently, but here are the basics of essence in Twilight. Now, before I go on, this is something I'm adding in off script, but Nick and I had to have this conversation. The Geist 2nd edition backer's book does not explain the difference between plasm and essence, and you could erroneously think they are the same thing. They are not. Essence is the ephemeral energy that makes up the twilight, the land of the dead, all that stuff. However, when that stuff manifests in the land of the living, that's what leaves behind a certain funk, a film. That is plasm. That is what Sin Eaters use to power their stuff. It is a very different method of getting to that power. And in order to transfer essence into plasm, there are many rituals and whatnot that need to be followed. And you can find that in the Eaters of the Dead section of the Backer's Guide to Geist. I'll cover that later when I do a specific Geist antagonist book, but it requires ritualistic methods to do so. It is not something you can just make happen. Now, there are ways to literally devour ghosts to gain back plasm. That's a whole other animal. So, I just wanted to clarify that difference between essence and plasm before I continued on. And now, I will continue on. Now, for ghosts, their basic essence is determined by their rank, though they have no limit as to how much they can use per turn. If they don't spend at least one daily, they enter hibernation until they do or something forces them to trigger it. If they're away from their anchor, they lose 1 essence per hour, and when they're out, they take 1 lethal damage to their corpus, or ephemeral body, and enter that damned hibernation again. They can, however, sense the presence of an anchor or a Vernian gate up to a mile away, and can boost that with the Seek Numina. Needless to say, they must use essence to fuel their manifestations, a form of their ghostly power, to get that funky noise playing. Regarding the breaking point mechanic of the storytelling system, these are some of the triggers. Losing an anchor without resolving it. No closure is bad and it takes a toll. When they first realize they're no longer among the living. Drinking from the waters of the underworld. It is intoxicating, powerful, and maddening. Breaking an old law in a dominion. And if you think that side effect is bad, wait until you meet the Kerberoy you pissed off doing it. Lastly, committing ectophagia, which is the act of ghost cannibalism. Makes sense. Now, all ghosts have bands and banes. Yes, bands and banes, they are different. I know the terms are painfully similar, but they are actually, we'll get right that. A ban is a certain mystical law that must be followed by our ghost. Depending on the rank, it changes the amount and severity of the ban, but they're nonetheless. A good example is, maybe you can't cross a field after midnight, or cross the specific types of bridge you died on. Now, a bane is an actual physical material or force that your corpus is weak to. Did you die on the electric chair? Perhaps because of that, a cattle prod jacks you up and you're still terrified of lightning. Perhaps it's something as basic as iron or salt, like 2 beloved brothers we mostly know tend to use against their fight against the ephemeral. Regardless, you get the idea. Wish we had had that when we first put our characters together because we did not know. While most base ghosts have minor forms of supernatural power called Numina, but if we're using our awesome Geist 2nd edition book, we find that now ghosts can trade 2 Numina for learning Geist manifestations on a 1x1 basis. The bitch of it is manifestations only function in the lands of the living, despite the fact that they occur in Twilight. Something to note for later. When using essence to fuel manifestation, it leaves behind a certain amount of plasm for the remainder of the scene in the lands of the living. Again, remember what I said a few moments ago. And also, remember when Egon put the stuff in the toaster? Right. I don't think it does as much as anything similar to that, but that's kind of the way plasm is. So, while I won't be going through all the manifestations in this guide, I won't go through them all, but I'll name them all, I will give a quick breakdown. Anchor jump, with teleportation between their anchors for whatever reason. Awe, causing terror in anyone that sees them. Blast, throwing freezing snot plasm people. It's fun. Descend. You need 3 other ghosts with this power, but if you get it done, it literally tears a chunk of living space into the grave below. Mother tested, Reaper approved. We'll get to that. Drain. The ghost steals willpower from someone. Emotional aura. The ghost sends out the power of heart. Alright. Okay, it's any emotion that it feels in order to distract. Empower ghost. Only rank 5 forces of death can use this, so consider it safe for Kerberoy and Thonian badasses. The badass spends 3 essence and raises a ghost of 3 or less rank up a dot. Engulf. Only for rank 3 or higher, you can grapple another ghost and lock it inside your corpus, forcing it into hibernation. And I thought they smelled bad on the outside. Firestarter. The ghost makes flammable shit flame on. Hallucination. Sights, sounds, and potentially even have the vision. Hold a conversation like you're onto a family reunion that you just can't get away from. Host jump. You manage to possess or claim manifestation, and you have that, that's great. Make like the House of Pain and jump around. No, I'm not sorry. Implant mission. You give the living a vision and they have to make it happen. Innocuous. You're good at being overlooked. Left-handed spanner. 3 moving parts and man-made. The ghost makes it work like a politician, meaning it doesn't work at all. Molliate. Sculpt your and others' corpus. Omen trance. Once a day, they get a glimpse of the future that can be up to a week away. Pathfinder. The ghost finds the quickest route anywhere in the land of the living. Proxy. They share their manifestations. How sweet. Why? Never trust the dead. Puppeteer. This makes another ghost use their manifestations for you. Rapture. You make a living party respond from their pleasure centers. More flies with honey, right? Regenerate. Using essence to heal damage to the corpus. Seek. The ghost can find suitable and useful conditions up to 2 miles per rank. Speed. The ghost moves fast. Whee! Sign. The ghost uses any medium, be it fogged glass, images on a screen, audible messages via phones, or whatever, to communicate. Stalwart. The ghost gets all armored up in Twilight, changing to resistance as its defense score. And fucking finally, telekinesis, moving shit with their mind. So there we have it, a breakdown of the ghostly condition. I guess we're done with that for now. So, what happens when that ghost comes across something and pulls Jim Carrey and just slaps that bitch on its face? Well, I'm talking about becoming a Reaper. So, let's go over some little details you need to know going in on this. Even the dead may die. As we went over, starting at rank 3 ghosts, they're not ghosts anymore. That's when they're considered Geist, the forces that bind themselves to a Sin Eater. At that point, they are not your average spook. Power has escalated exponentially, and it takes quite a bit of power to kill something so strong and, well, already dead. When that happens, the remnants of the Geist tumble down to the great below, their agonized or desperate features truly immortalized in something called a death mask. Yes, it's gross and it's the leftovers of their face. This death mask is no mere stylish adornment, however. This item, now a very potent relic steeped in dark essence, would be likely washed along the waters of the underworld to the lower depths. In theory, it could really end up almost anywhere in the underworld, but along these banks are where they're most likely to come to rest, awaiting the time when a lucky ghost happens across it. Once this happens, things move very quickly. Upon slipping on the mask, the ghost feels chilling water course along it. This is the most emotion or feeling that the ghost has had since it died. And here's where accounts kind of differ a bit. Some say for a moment they have a mystical meeting with Daunic gods. Some say it's the literal hive mind of the Great Below itself. But regardless, from that moment on, that ghost, now a Reaper, has one very specific purpose. The dead belong below, and it's your job to get them there and keep them there. Specifics range in the book exactly how many ranks the ghost jumps up, but they most certainly do jump up ranks. They take on the monstrous physical change partly based on what the Geist looked like back before it was just a death mask, and they instantly take on some more abilities to accompany their newfound state. Before we get into those though, let's talk about rank and Reapers again for a moment. A big disclaimer here. The books are not super clear on many of the specifics, so I'm going to give my take based on logic and inference, and as a way to keep the antagonists and potential Power Reapers a bit balanced as well. Yes, I said players, as with Geist 2nd Edition, you definitely have enough data to allow the occasional player access to these fun beings. Now, let's assume you're a normal ghost, but instead of using the simplified, it quite realistically draws simple rules for Ghosts in the Chronicles of Darkness, you make a literal mortal character sheet and just assume they're dead. For me, it makes conversion a bit easier, but let's talk about logic and how a player would be a power-balanced Reaper. You have 2 choices really. The player starts as a rank 1 ghost, or rank 2 ghost. For the rank 1 though, you'd require some manner of outside assistance to make this happen. Perhaps a curious Moros mage who had been exploring the Great Below found one in the upper reaches and places on one of those trapped in a loop, freeing him and gifting him back with his mind and power to boot, simply to see what the hell would happen. You could have the Death Mask raise him 2 ranks, putting his power level on par with that of a Sin Eater. Your next choice is the easier of the 2. A rank 2 ghost simply finds one somehow or barters it away from an unsuspecting relic merchant or in some underworld poker game. Regardless, I'd only give them a single rank boost if you want to keep the power level. That's all said, let's talk some of the gifts of taking on the role of a Reaper. Aside from maintaining all the prior noumena and stats as a ghost, they get a bump to all skills and attributes based on their prior rank. It doesn't make any sense to raise any stats they didn't have beforehand, so allow your storyteller discretion to lead you here. Whenever they wear their death mask, they can ascend to the lands of the living whenever they wish. They can check on their loved ones, leave messages, even hold meetings should they wish. They regain the ability to enjoy food and mortal sensations once more. They can feed and make love with the best of them, the living, like anyone else would. Think of them as being both Sin Eater and Geist at once. It would be interesting for them to come across a Sin Eater who had hit perfect synergy and merged with his Geist, wouldn't it? Of course, it's also only a potential end to a Sin Eater's game cycle. Again, to each their own as a storyteller. The Reaper also now has total awareness, no longer a lost and confused ghost should it have been a rank, in which case it was before. In fact, the Reaper is indistinguishable from any other ghost should it keep its death mask hidden. Also, needless to say, it no longer loses essence for as long as it continues to serve its purpose to the grade below. It continues dragging ghosts from Twilight back down to where they belong. A notable quirk is that a Reaper if they go too long without dragging prey to the grade below, it's penalized by the powers that be, as their corpus dries and cracks. You do well to obey their rules, should you wish to continue enjoying the freedom it has granted you. Reapers take to their role a number of different ways. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and more than one way to drag ghosts back down to the grade below. Some say Masquerade as a charming fellow Twilight Dweller is a good path, sussing out what and where a ghost's anchors are to drag them down below once you destroy them. While cold, it beats brutalizing the information out of them, as they can easily go about it that way too. Some are more cruel in the mindset, playing themselves off as some manner of angel or guide to a better place. Irony, considering how harsh a place they're taking them to. Then, as mentioned above, they can just brutalize them and get the desired effect. They can just beat the shit out of them. No matter the method, the end result is the same. At some point, the Reaper uses the engulf Numina and swallows the ghost whole should they not pass through a gate, ribs separating or mouth opening up like a snake's maw. Once within, it's game over ghosty as a Reaper sates their need. The irony of how similar a Sin Eater and a Reaper are is not lost on either party, and though often at odds once in a while, they must work together sometimes to deal with a problematic and potentially overpowered ghost. Very rarely do these deals work out, as 9 times out of 10 the Reaper's goals are selfish, while the Sin Eater is simply trying to do what's right. That's the issue, however. While the Reaper claims that the dead belong down below, perhaps the Sin Eater finds that a crueler fate, is awaiting that ghost that wishes to resolve the anchors, freeing the ghost from existence and denying the Reaper its meal. Should it come to this, bound be wary. A one-on-one battle of Sin Eater versus Reaper rarely comes out on top for our Sin Eater, and leaving one more death mask down below only serves to bolster the ranks of the Reapers. So, did you enjoy learning more about these dead denizens of the depths? I really like Reapers, and it's something that with the Backers Edition PDF, there's certain things that aren't quite elaborated on enough or filled in, and I really hope that they dig further into Reapers. So, I hope you found this fun and informative, and should you feel I missed anything about it you'd have liked, mention it in the comments or in an email, and I'll do what I can to hit it in another entry into the Beginner's Guide to Geist. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. When we hit 1,000 subscribers, we have some really cool stuff planned. As of this listening, hopefully we have Broken Bluffs up in some capacity, but if not, I apologize. My daughter broke her leg and it's eating up quite a bit of time. Once more, I'm Chris the Librarian here for the Botch Pit, and thanks for listening. Until next time, goodbye.